Hello, bonjour, hello, hi, heya, and privyet, hockey fans. Welcome back to the Europuck podcast, the show where two Brits talk all things European hockey as part of the Hockey Podcast Network. My name is Hayden, or Odd Man Rush, as you can see up there, and joining me, of course, once again, is anybody surprised at this point? We're about 19-20 episodes in. It's Chris Gadsby. Hey, Chris.
Hello.
How you doing today?
Hello. Yes, not too bad, really. Getting well into the New Year's resolutions and starting to work my way through all of my birthday presents from yesterday. So,
ooh, happy birthday, Chris!
Getting it's doing some rather infuriating bits and pieces, and it's been a busy day, really. I've had one of those days. You probably had them as well, where you have a really long list of jobs to do, and you put off doing them because it's such a long list. But when you break it down, each job is like 10 minutes max. And if you just got on and did it, it would be like an hour and a half of your day.
Oh, yeah.
So it's been quite busy, really.
Okay, because I kind of had that today, actually, as well. We might have been mirroring each other a little bit more than we expected today, Chris, because I had to record a video that's going up. Will be up by the time this podcast goes out. And I tried to do it yesterday. It's Wednesday, the 13th of January, by the way, in case anyone's wondering. I tried to record it yesterday, and it just, technical problems, just wasn't working out. I was kind of like, oh, for goodness sake, really? So then I had to do it earlier today, and then we had to come and do this, obviously, and then there's all the other kind of household stuff you have to do. Had to get an ad that I'm running on my channel, had to record that and get that all set up for the month, and I kind of put it off until the day before I needed to do it, because it's like, oh, Christmas and New Year happens and I don't really need to worry about it right now, and then it gets to the point where you do need to worry about it. You're like, oh no. Yeah, it's pretty much how it goes, isn't it? But do you want to disclose how old you are after your birthday, Chris, or is it better left unsaid?
I think I don't think I can class myself as early 20s anymore. I kind of have to be mid-20s.
Yeah.
Now that I'm 25 now, so.
I mean, I feel the same. It's kind of like once you hit 23, 24, because I think of the same when you talk about NHL players and NHL prospects. When they get to 23, 24, it's kind of like, oh, if they haven't made the NHL yet, they might not make it. And we're kind of at that point. It's like, oh.
Yeah, I think I've finally got to admit that I'm not going to make it into the NHL.
Ah, you sure the skating lessons aren't going to work? You might be like an Artemi
We're not allowed any
Panarin.
skating lessons.
You never know. You could
I
be the
can't
next.
even go and play golf at the moment.
You could be the next Artemi Panarin, Chris. You never know. You could be the next 30-year-old rookie in the NHL. You know, it happens sometimes. Doesn't happen very often, but you never know. But anyway, let's talk about some hockey, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes.
So last week we went through the World Junior Championships. Took you all through that. We should also mention happy beginning of the technically 2021 NHL season. I'm wearing my New York Rangers shirt today, which Chris cannot see at the moment.
On Maple Leafs.
Yeah. So I'm wearing, something NHL related today. I usually wear something relatively NHL or hockey related on the show. I try to make sure I do. But yeah, we're going to be doing something pretty usual for the podcast at this point now. We're going to be talking about the latest scores, standings, and a bit of news around the hockey world. We couldn't really find a huge amount of specific news points that weren't specific to a certain team in the league. So we'll go through them as we go through the league specifically. I know Chris found a couple. And yeah, we're pretty much just going to do that. So yeah, let's get on with it. Why not? I don't really have anything else to say at that point. So let's first take a look, like we always do, with the KHL. Now, as some of you might notice, I've just noticed that Chris's window isn't too good, so I'll fix that while we go through the KHL. Chris, do you want to just take us through the KHL while I sort out the technical difficulties? It shouldn't take too long.
You messed it up.
No, I'm doing a great job. It's almost there, Chris. I promise.
Okay, so let's start in the Western Conference of the Continental Hockey League like we normally do, and out top is CSKA Moscow, who are 7 points clear of SK St. Petersburg, who have not been having the best time of it recently. Lokomotiv Yaroslavl in third on 61 points. They've got a couple of games in hand on SK St. Petersburg. I'll get into that in a bit more detail in a few moments. The middle of the pack is still relatively tight. You've got Dynamo Moscow, who are kind of in a bit of no man's land. But then from Jokerit, Minsk, Spartak Moscow, Sherepovets, Jokerit are currently, as it stands at the moment, getting a point from their draw with Nizhny Nizhny-Kamsk at the bottom of the Eastern Conference. So it's a little bit skewed at the moment as we're recording this, but That rounds out the playoffs over in the West. You've got Podolsk, who are knocking on the door. You've got Sochi in 10th, who are a good 19 points now back from those playoff spots. And I mean, they're on a bad run as well. 8 defeats in the last 9 for HK Sochi, and Dinamo Riga rounding out the bottom. There are enough games left that technically anybody can still get into the playoffs, but let's be a bit realistic here. Then in the Eastern Conference, I'll go from bottom to top because I've got some details I want to talk about with Akbars Kazan. So we'll start at the bottom where Kunlun Red Star are at the bottom at the moment because Nizhny Camps are currently tying with Yokerit, as I said. They've lost their last 4. Then you've got Nizhny Camps, Amur Khabarovsk, Syria, Novosibirsk. And then at the bottom of the playoffs places, you've got Baris Sultan there on 42 games played. So they've got games in hand on everybody. And 49 points. It's Tractor Chelyabinsk as well. That's the other interesting bit. They've struggled since Christmas. They've only got 1 point since Christmas. Bear in mind that was, a good 3 months ago now. 3 months, 3 weeks ago now. Sorry, should I say? 3 months ago would be a bit.
I mean, given all the stuff that's been happening in the country recently with all the lockdowns and stuff, it feels like 3 months, doesn't it?
I saw a thing the other day that said, "Don't worry, everybody. It's only 3 lockdowns till Christmas." It kind of feels a bit that way.
It does. It really does.
And then you move up into the top 6. You've got Nizhny Novgorod on 54 points, Yekaterinburg on 55 at the moment because they're beating Spartak Moscow. Magnitogorsk 57, Salavat Ufa on 58. So again, they're getting in there. It's quite a tight midfield as well, particularly with the games in hand. Avangard on still doing well in second place in the conference, 62 points there. And then Akbars Kazan, who are kind of running away with it a bit. They're a good kind of 3 games clear now, 2 and a bit games clear at the top with 45 games played. So they've only got 15 games to go in the regular season. They're on a really good run at the moment. They've won 11 out of the last 12.
Wow.
Of Akbars Kazan. So yeah, they're starting to pull away. That game that they lost was against Salavat Ulayev Ufa, and basically they just completely lost their cool in the third period. So I was looking at I looked at the game breakdown, and it was 3-3 at the end of 40 minutes, and they ended up losing 7-3.
Oh, okay, wow.
They completely lost it. 3 power play goals in the third period. Now I had a look at the stats, and I was looking at all of the breakdowns and all the rest of it. In the third period, so the 20 minutes of the third period, they spent 8 minutes and 49 seconds on the penalty kill.
Wow. Jeez.
Of which they spent 8 minutes on the penalty kill in the final 10 minutes and 26 seconds.
Oh, jeez. So
in the final 10 and a half minutes of the game, they only had just under 2.5 minutes of even strength.
How do you expect to win a hockey game when you're in that position? You know, it's kind of
that was kind of the case, really.
Yeah.
And because of the penalties stacking and all the rest of it, I think it was something, and get the game sheet back up, it was something like Ufa were on the power play for something like 7 minutes in a row.
Oh, wow.
And they got 2 5-on-3 goals in that time.
Wow.
So that's the it was just, I think it was something stupid. I've just got the game sheet up. So there was a slashing call at 9:34.
Okay.
He came out the box at 11:34.
Right.
They then had 42 seconds on the power play on even strength, and then there was another penalty.
Okay.
He then came out the box.
Right.
They then had 49 seconds of even strength before another penalty.
Oh, okay.
And that was the start of the 5-on-3.
Right.
But one of them was a 2+2.
Okay.
They then scored on the 5+3.
Okay.
They then scored on the 5-on-3. So one guy came out of the box. It was 5-on-4.
Right.
18 seconds after that goal, it went back to 5-on-3 again.
Oh, my Lord.
And then 23 seconds after it went back to 5-on-3 again, they scored another power play goal. And then by the time the guy with 2+2 came out, it was 55 seconds to go. They'd conceded 2 5-on-3 power play goals within 4 41 seconds of each other, and the game had gone from being 4-2 and reachable. Sorry, so we've gone from being 5-3 and reachable to 7-3 and completely out of it. I had a look at the percentages as well. Akbar's Kazan were 54% on the penalty kill that game.
Jeez Louise, that's not good at all. And I'm glad that you brought up Salavat Yuleyev, actually, Chris. I mean, first of all, for, doing a good job of capitalising on the many power plays they got in the third period that game. But I also saw via, I believe it was KHL, the English KHL Twitter page, that Timu Hartikainen of Salavat Yuleyev is, I believe, I'm not sure if he has broken it now, but at the time he had tied it. He tied the record for the most points in a regular season by a Finnish-born player in the KHL. So that's super impressive. And obviously a lot of that came with the connection that he had with Michael Granlund, who was formerly of the NHL, but he's obviously re-signed with the NHL. And like we mentioned earlier, the NHL season starts up today as we're recording this on the 13th of January. So obviously Salavat Yuleyev lost one of their top point scorers this season, pretty much after one of the games ended. He was like, see you guys, I'm going back to North America to play in the NHL, which is kind of what we were expecting from Michael Granlund.
Yeah, we were.
Yeah, because he'd played in the NHL last year, and, the NHL has only started up now. So he got himself a good 3-4 months in the KHL, grinding it out there, getting some playing time, being a pretty productive scorer for them as well. So hopefully that gives him a breath of fresh air in the NHL, because God knows he needs it. But when I look at the standings here, Chris, once again, we said it several times, it's really funny how the KHL regular season has like 15 games to go for most teams. Yet the NHL is literally only starting today.
I know. It is strange. And I was looking at them, and I was going through writing my prem. We've got some leagues that have got like 9 games to go, and some that aren't halfway yet. It is a strange one, and it is a really tight midfield. But I also want to talk about SK St. Petersburg, and I know how much you like SK St. Petersburg.
I am a fan of them. I have a jersey of theirs, so go for it.
They've also struggled since Christmas.
Yes, they have.
They have only got 2 wins in the last 7 games. And both of those have come against HK Sochi.
Yay!
So the wheels have really kind of come off SK St. Petersburg, and now they're really falling behind. They're 7 points behind CSK Moscow at the moment. CSK Moscow have got those 2 games in hand. Lokomotiv Yaroslavl have got 2 games in hand, so they could leap from St. Petersburg as well. So it is interesting, really, in that I think because of the divisions, St. Petersburg are going to stay in second.
Yeah.
Because they are 11 points clear of Jokerit at the moment, who are in second in the Bobrov division. But I think in terms of just the sheer number of points around, like even Dynamo Moscow as well.
Yeah.
They're only, 4 points behind SK St. Petersburg. But what I'm finding interesting is that we often talk, and it's mentioned quite a bit in the NHL as well, about the strength of the divisions and how someone like Tampa, they always do quite well. Like the Central Division's always hard, or all the rest of it.
Yeah.
If you look at the 2 divisions out in the West, you've got your CSK Moscow, Lokomotiv Yaroslavl, Dynamo Moscow, and Dynamo Minsk all have the same number of points. Let's take before today into account, because Jokerit might lose this game yet. They've all got more points than second place in the Bobrov division.
Yeah. It's crazy, isn't it?
So you talk about the strength of the divisions. You look at SK St. Petersburg, who are just way out in front in that division. And then the other one it's just so much stronger than the Bobrov division.
I wouldn't be surprised if SK St. Petersburg was put in the Bobrov division so they could win it every single year, to say they're like, because there's a lot of politics that goes in the KHL. Like, there's no way to beat around the bush on that fact. So I wouldn't be surprised, because let's be honest, there's been several points during the season where Lokomotiv has had more points than St. Petersburg, but because they're in the same, because Lokomotiv are in the same division as CSKA and Moscow, they don't get to take second place because the second place spot goes to the leader of the Bobrov division. It's a weird system that they have going there, and we've talked about it a lot, obviously, over the season. But the one thing I will say about SK St. Petersburg recently, you notice they've got their first win, like in their last, 5 or 6 at the moment, Chris? How many losses did they get straight?
Yeah, it was 2 wins in the last 10, so they'd lost 4.
Okay.
And then they beat Sochi by 3 goals to 1.
What do you notice about the dates of when they started losing that 4 straight? Like, so when did it first happen?
The first game of the 4 was on the 30th of December.
And what was happening on the 30th of December, Chris? The World Junior Championships.
Well, yes, true. But you could also say that from you can say that from Boxing Day, can't you? When they lost to Dynamo Moscow,
exactly.
And since the World Junior Championship started, they've only beaten Sochi.
And who is their starting netminder? Who was at the World Junior Championships? So I'm not saying that's like the sole reason they've gone on this losing streak, but when you're missing a netminder that, as we've seen throughout the season, he didn't have the best tournament. We talked about that last week. But when you consider that he's one of their best players without a doubt, it damages your team to not have your starting goaltender, or it puts you at a significant disadvantage to what you would be at full strength. Now, obviously, that's, like I said, not the full reason. To be honest, with SK St. Petersburg this year, they just haven't had enough clutch point-per-game players. They've had one, I believe, but other than that, it's kind of, there's a couple of guys that chip in goals every game or two, but there's not really that many, there's not enough consistent point-per-game scorers on the roster that they would usually have back in the days of Datsuk and Gusev and Patrick Hirshley and everything like that. So, and even Ilya Kovalchuk, if you want to go a few more years behind. So I feel like it's been a bit of a shaky year because they've lost so many NHL caliber players over the last couple of years.
They don't have any point per game players this season.
Yeah, which on a team that's supposed to be competing and supposed to have some of the best players in the league, it's a difficult situation to be in. But looking at the KHL, we've still got a few weeks to go before the season's up. We're going to have a lot of fun talking about the playoffs, I would imagine. Hopefully this year's playoffs aren't cancelled like last year's were. They managed to get through the first round, I think a game or two into the second round before it finished. We're getting right down to the wire with some of these teams in the KHL, but we've already committed quite a lot of time to talking about them. So let's move on to the Swedish Hockey League. I'll take you through the standings there, because, Chris, it literally took me like 2 seconds to get your window figured out. So, I was like lightning fast. I just think I deserve a bit of praise for that. But anyway, so with the Swedish Hockey League, we have Rögle BK still up in top, 63 points in 31 games played. However, the Frölunda Indians didn't have the best of starts to start the year compared to their usual Champions Hockey League winning standards. That said, they've played one more game and only have one less point than Rögle, so very much in the running for top of the Swedish Hockey League. And it's nice to see that the Swedish Hockey League has actually got through a good chunk of their season now, because they were also a league that had to start late and had a few issues with COVID and everything like that. So it's good to see that they're, pretty much every single team, bar Brinas, are 30 games into the season. So they're pretty much a good chunk of the way through the year. Do you know how many games the SHL plays?
Yeah, it's a 52-game season. Okay, so they've got, anywhere between kind of 20 games to go in that season.
Well, it's good to see that they've pretty much gone well over halfway. This is such a positive sign considering the current situation. Then you have Luleå in third place, 60 points in 30 games. You have the Växjö Lakers, Åbro and Leksands finishing off those quarterfinal playoff places with 58, 54 and 49 points respectively. Then the kind of, the round of 8 finals, the ones that don't get that first round bye. You have Färjestad, Djurgården, Skellefteå and Oskarshamn with 45, 44, 44 as well and 34 points respectively. So there's very much a gap between 9 and 10 at the moment, and I would imagine that gap might stay given how some of the recent results have gone. Then kind of sitting outside of the playoffs but not in the play-out round, you have the Malmö Redhawks and Brynäs IF. The good thing for Brynäs, they have at least 6 or 7 games, 5, 6, 7 games in hand on pretty much every single other team in the league. Yeah, they're sitting in 12th place, but they're 5 points back from Malmo, only 6 points back from Oskarshamn in 10th. So if Brynäs go on a good run for the rest of the year, they could find themselves in the playoffs, which, anything could happen at that point. And then in the playout rounds, we surprisingly have HV 71 with 29 points in 30 games and Linköpings with 27 points in 30 games. And I believe, Chris, you found some news regarding Linköpings recently.
Yes, so Linchpins, they're bottom of the league, as you've said. They lost their last 9 in a row.
Oh,
And back on, in fact, this time last Wednesday, they changed their head coach. Well, they relieved their former head coach of his duties. Should we put it that way? I'll just get I'll just get it back up. But yeah, so I mean, one of the things I found interesting, and I always feel not so much in ice hockey, but they do kind of teams change their like managers very easily. I find sometimes.
Yes.
And I think it's less so in ice hockey. But the thing I looked at is that Linksmeans, they've played 3 games since this head coach change.
Okay.
And they've lost those 3 games as well.
Oh.
So you're there thinking, oh, maybe it isn't actually the head coach. But yes, Linksmean Hockey Club has chosen to release Bert Robertson from his position as head coach of the men's team. Bert, the statement on the website is, Bert has helped us in a good way with the change journey. This is also translated from Swedish, so it might not be brilliant English. With the change journey we initiated 2 years ago, but the sporting results have been lacking. We therefore choose to make this change, says Nicholas Persson, GM at the Linksmean Hockey Club. As of today, the men's team will be led by Daniel Eriksson and Johan Ackerman, both with a long past within the club. Martin Dennis and Jonas Fransson continue with their duties as assistant coaches and netminding coaches. Niklas Havelid will complement the management staff and step into the role of assistant coach. Then goes on to say, we believe a lot in the squad we have. Through their previous roles as assistant coaches, Daniel and Johan know the squad very well, and we have full confidence in them and know that they will take the team forward in a good way together with Nicholas, Martin, and Jonas.
I see.
So yeah, so they've changed all the coaching staff, and they still lost they lost the first 3 games with the new coaching staff. They lost it 4-2, 3-1, and 2-1.
I see. So obviously they've had a bit of a cabinet reshuffle there down in Linköpings. But the interesting thing is, now I think you're completely correct that especially head coaches in hockey are the scapegoat. When anything goes wrong, especially the fan perspective, it's not so much the coach, although there are a lot of fans that will immediately dogpile a coach. We've seen it in the NHL. We've seen it throughout English hockey, the Elite Ice Hockey League throughout the years as well. But you always find that whenever the general manager or the management team want to make a change and they know that the season hasn't gone the way that they wanted and they think they can still salvage it, they immediately use the head coach as a scapegoat and go, okay, right, you're being put on a really short leash, or okay, we're going to let you go and find somebody else. Now, in Linköping and the roster's credit, it's very difficult to kind of readjust to a different philosophy from a new coach 3 games into his tenure and kind of expect the miracle results. So you always expect there to be a bit of a rough transition when a new coach, especially head coach, comes in midway through the season. So hopefully Linköping should pick up a couple of wins here and there for the rest of the year. But with 30 games played already, with less than half the season left to go, I mean, they're 27 points. They're not far off HV 71, but they're also in the play-out round as well, and they haven't had the best of seasons either. So, it's going to take a bit of a fight to get back into the position where they're going to be looking at the 2021-22 SHL season going, look, we're actually going to play there this year. Don't you think, Chris?
Yeah, and I think realistically, you've got to not look at Brynäs and you've got to look at Malmo as the team to catch, and they've got a 9-point gap to make that up. Admittedly, they do have 1 game in hand, but I mean, of those 3 games, I mean, the first game that came against Brynäs, I mean, everyone's new in their position, so, you can't really expect too much of them from that.
Yeah.
And then their last 2 games, they've had 1 against Rögle and then 1 against Lelea. So they've played top and third in the league, which you wouldn't expect them to win anyway.
Yeah.
And considering that they held Lelea to only 2 goals to 1 defeat, maybe things might look up for them. It's definitely something to keep an eye on over the next, few weeks and months. The fixtures, the SHL season is planned to finish on the 11th of March. So, 7 or 8 weeks left of that season. The only other thing I'll say is that at the top, it's quite tight, 63, 62 and 60 for the teams at the top. If you look at the form guide over the last kind of 10 or so games, you look at Lelea, who are actually the top team over the last 10 games with 7 wins and overtime wins. So call it 8. We'll call it 8-1-1.
Wow.
And then Frölunda and Malmo have both got the same with 7-3-0. So all the teams at the top, they're very much matching each other. They're not really, pulling away, putting any form together. They're all kind of going toe for toe. So that could be a very exciting race down the stretch.
Oh, definitely. And we will keep you updated with how it goes along over the next weeks and months. And I would imagine the Swedish Hockey League is going to finish in style like they always do every single year. So that's the Swedish Hockey League. Let's move on to the Finnish Liga now, shall we? And there's some games being played at the moment in the Finnish Liga. Well, I'll quickly take you through the standings and then I'll get Chris's thoughts. So we have Lukko in first place, 24 games played. They're currently got a 1-1 tie with Karpat at the moment. 52 points in 24 games as it stands right now with the results. Then we have Eels in second place with 48 points in 23 games. We have the Pelicans and IFK Helsinki taking third and fourth with 42 and 41 points respectively. Then we start to get into the 30s with Kuku and Kalpa. Kuku are currently beating Kalpa 2-1, which is why they're currently sitting above them in the standings at 5th and 6th. Then that's all of the quarterfinal position. So similar kind of league layout to the Liga as the Swedish Hockey League. Then you have Karpat, TPS Turku, Sport and Asat with 34, 33, 32 and 32 points. So very tight middle pack. It's kind of top two teams, then kind of the next 3 or 4 teams, then kind of all the round of 8 teams, the first round non-bye teams have to go at it against each other. But also very close up in the rear, we have Tapara and Saipa with 11th and 12th position with 31 and 30 points. Ukrit with 29 points as well. So those 3 teams, 11th to 13th, they have the chance to kind of go on a bit of a good run for the rest of the year and they might find themselves in the playoffs. And then you have JYP Jyväskylä, one of the Champions Hockey League winner a couple of seasons ago, down in 14th place with only 20 points in 23 games. And then Hämeenlinna, 17 points in 23 games. So it looks like we might have found the 2 teams that are going to be sitting in the basement for the rest of the year. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, JYP being down there has surprised me a little bit, I must be honest. But again, my notes down here is on Hämeenlinna, 8-game losing streak there, so not great for them. And the other thing is the midfield that I want to talk about as well. So obviously I wrote this before tonight's game started, but effectively 1 game separates Vasan in 8th, who are now 9th, but Vasan in 9th to Ukrit in 13th. And 1 victory and picking up 3 points for the victory. And if the results go your way, you can see yourself jumping from 13th to 9th just in a single game. Even going on past that, you've got, 5 points, which is only 2 games between Kalpa in 6th and getting a bye in the playoffs, down to Ukrit in 13th. So the midfield of the Liga is really tight. They've still got about 30 games to go, from what I can make out. 35 games to go, something like that. It's quite a long season over there in Finland, and of course they did have the problems earlier on, so they are playing catch up a bit. But it's such a tight midfield that we're going to see a lot of movers and shakers in the coming weeks.
Absolutely, and I think, like you mentioned, the several week kind of circuit breaker lockdown that the Finnish Liga had, or the kind of hiatus that they took in order to stop the curb of the spread of the virus, whether it be around Finland in general or the Finnish Liga specifically. That's obviously had taken a bit of a damper and kind of postponed a lot of games and has kind of grinded a lot of the season to a halt. And like Chris mentioned, bit of a catch-up taking place here, but the good thing is they still have plenty of time. We're in mid-January. The ice and the snow isn't going anywhere anytime soon, especially in a place like Finland. So, and it's good that they're back on the ice playing again. That's such a good sign to see. And hopefully things will carry on being successful. Let's be honest, every single league that tries to play this, given how easy it is to spread the virus, we're going to see cases in places throughout hockey. We've seen it throughout Europe. The NHL starting up, they've had about 27, I think, positive cases as of yesterday. During the training camp period, kind of end of December, start of January, mid-January. So, it's going to happen. So it's kind of, you've got to find the right times to go, okay, let's take a circuit breaker 2 weeks and come back after Christmas or something like that. And yeah, it's looking like the Finnish Liga is going to be a fun league to watch as we go along. The good thing is, once some of the other leagues get into the playoffs, we'll still have some leagues that are finishing off their regular seasons. So while we be doing like playoff previews or looking at the playoff results in certain leagues, we'll still have every single team in a certain league to take a look at as the season goes along. But yeah, that's what the Finnish league is like at the moment. It's really interesting as we've gone along to see the gaps that are being created in some of these leagues now that we haven't. This is the first time we've looked at them in like 3-4 weeks, isn't it, Chris? So it's
yeah. I mean, the Finnish league. There are some leagues, and we'll come on to them, where there is such a big split, and the Finnish league just isn't one of them.
No,
as I said, you've got 5 points between 6th and 13th, and a couple of games don't go your way, or they do go your way in the case of the teams currently not in the playoffs, and you're in the situation where you might be getting a bye.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll have to see how the results do in the games that are played at the moment and how they affect the standings when we come back to it next week. So let's move on to the Swiss National League now. So Chris, do you want to take us through the standings of the Swiss National League? I've got them up on the screen.
Through the standings
take
of
us away.
The Swiss National League. Yeah, so top of the Swiss National League is Zug, still 57 points. They're 8 points clear of the Zurich Lions in second. Then Jeanette Fribourg in third, Lausanne in fourth, Servette in fifth, Lugano in sixth. HC Davos in seventh, BLBN in eighth, Ambri Piotta in ninth, Rapperswil in 10th, the Langnau Tigers in 11th, and then SC Bern in 12th at the bottom of the league. Now, I've written quite a bit about SC Bern here.
Go for it.
So, what you've got to say is the Swiss League, they're about halfway through their season.
Okay.
So there's still a bit to go, but the shock is Bern being right at the bottom. They look as though they're struggling. Now, they've got games in hand. Yes, that's true. And they have got a lot of postponements as well. But if you look at their record, they're, if we take it NHL way, 6-11-2.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like they're winning all the games that they've been playing.
No.
You look at the points they've got. So they've got 19 points in 19 games. They're averaging a point a game. If you put them up at 26 games, that's at their current rate 26 points. They're still in the relegation zone.
Yeah, that's true.
Are we in a situation here? Could the team with normally the highest attendance in Europe by a considerable margin get relegated out of the National League? That would be like Manchester United getting relegated out of the Premier League.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy.
How, is that a thing? Is that going to be something that we're going to be seeing now? Because even with their point per game average, they're going to be in the relegation zone.
Yeah.
And they've got, they are really struggling as well. They've got, if I just have a look at their fixture list and just remind myself of their fixture list, their next 4 games have all been postponed. They're not back again until the 24th of January.
Oh, wow,
I think the thing that we've got to consider with that as well, the more their games get postponed and the more they've got to cram games in at the end of the season, the more they're going to likely suffer from injuries and fatigue, and it's going to hurt them even more.
Yeah, this is kind of crazy, the fact that, like we mentioned, we did it on our previous podcast before we joined the network, and we've talked about it a lot, as we've gone along with other stuff that we've talked about. SC Bern, year after year after year, they get such great attendance. I would be so curious if this wasn't in a COVID world and usual fan attendance was allowed, which I'm pretty sure it's not in the Swiss League, and they had a lot of issues with that. But could you imagine during this season, I would have been so curious to know what the attendance would have been like if SC Bern had this kind of season with full 100% fan attendance allowed. That would have been absolutely crazy to see whether they still have the hardcore dedicated fans coming in, night out to watch them usually lose more often than not, twice as often, in fact, or whether it kind of withered a little bit and they dropped in the standings in terms of the IIHF's rankings. That would have been so interesting to see. But unfortunately, we can't see that with the crazy year that's been 2020 and the 2020/21 season.
Yeah,
Chris.
but they have been playing games. They played on the 5th, so they're just having some kind of breaker at the moment. But and they obviously beat Ambri Piotta in their last game. But they lost by 7-1 to Lausanne before that.
Oh, wow.
And then they lost to the Langnau Tigers. A great final period in that game, 3-3 in the final period. Looking at it, did they throw the game away? Yes, they threw the game away completely in the final period, and then they lost on penalties to Rapperswil just before Christmas. But I think if you want to look at a team that, there could be a number of factors, but you look at a team where they have the highest attendance and then they get no attendance. And we've seen it in other sports as well. And people who love stats even more than I do have looked at the percentage of games won by the away team this season compared to normal when there's fans and the rest of it. And maybe it's affected Burn as well as the squad with a lot of postponements. It's affected their mentality. They're so used to having this huge following, which is bigger than like many other teams. I think it was bigger than a couple of NHL teams. Oh yeah,
absolutely.
Last season as well. It's incredible the attendance that they have and just how much it's affecting them. And part of me is like, obviously I don't want them to go down. They're such a massive club. And then part of me is like, I kind of want to see what happens if they do.
Yeah.
Part of me is like, they're such a massive club. They really shouldn't be in the second tier. But I kind of want them to be in the second tier just to see what happens.
Yeah.
Like, do they come back with fans next year and they still have 16,000 fans and they just dominate the second tier and win almost everything? Do they lose all their players to the top tier and really struggle?
Yeah, I think it'd be really interesting to see, like, because like you say, they're such a big club, such a staple in kind of the attendance figures, but also like they're down there for a reason, like they obviously haven't had a very good season, so maybe they do deserve to go down and kind of take a few lumps and then come back in a year or two's time and see how they do. But other than SC Bern, there's a couple of other teams that have really surprised me based on what I can remember from the last time we looked at this 3-4 weeks ago. There's a huge 8-point gap at the top of the standings. EV Zug did not have that big of a margin in front, and I'm pretty sure they weren't even the first place team last time we checked. I believe it was either Fribourg or Zurich or Lausanne was sitting up there in the top. I think it was Lausanne actually that was sitting up there in the top. Go for it.
I'll look at the last 10 games. You've got Zug who have gone 8-0-2 in the last 10 games. They've lost in regulation in the last 10. Which is really why they're up there. They've picked up a point at least in each of the last 10 games.
Wow.
25 points from a possible 30, which is really why they've made a jump up. If you compare that to Lausanne, who have only got 17 points from the last 30, Zurich have got 20, Fribourg have got 20. So they're a good, they're a reg win and an overtime win ahead of anybody else in the last 10 games. And that really does make a difference. So they're obviously up and there about, because they're now 7 points clear at the top, and that's only a 5-point difference over the last 10 games. But if you do look at Lausanne, there were 13 points, so they were up and there about. But the lead that they have really kind of pushed it. As I said, they've got points in each of their last 10 games. Even the games that they've lost, they lost to Davos on penalties. And then they lost to Davos in overtime. But they have not, I'm just going to keep going back here because that was the last game. So they have not lost a game and Gurko, okay, have a guess. When was the last game they lost in regulation?
Okay, so I'm thinking of a date. I'm not going to go with the opponent because that's like a 1 in 11 chance. But the last time that they lost a regulation game, EV Zug, I'm going to say it was December the 13th.
Well, you got the 13th bit right.
November the 13th.
It was the 13th of November was the last time they didn't pick up a point in a game, which is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 16 game point streak.
Wow. No wonder they're up in top then. Jeez, well done, EV Zug. So that was one of the teams that I wanted to kind of mention. And I'm glad that you mentioned it in your discussion when we were talking about Zug. HC Davos. They were a team that was sitting right at the bottom of the league with several less games played than the rest of the league, in fairness, but they were sitting at the bottom of the league, not doing very well. Obviously, Jumbo Joe Thornton left the team to go back to the NHL and join the Toronto Maple Leafs, which Chris is happy about, obviously. But then they're sitting in 7th place. They're only 5 points back from getting a quarterfinals berth and getting a first round bye. So they've really had a kind of resurgence over the last couple of weeks or so. Obviously, they've lost 3 of their last 5 games, got points in 3 of their last 5 as well. So not the best last couple of weeks for them. But that said, they've managed to do a decent job so far. So fair play to them. What do you think about that, Chris?
I'm glad, actually, you brought up HC Davos because I just need to get the date up again.
Go for it.
But they on the 2nd of January, celebrated their 100th birthday.
No
They were
way.
founded 100 years ago on the 2nd.
Wow.
So yes, a century old now, HC Davos.
Happy birthday, HC Davos. I mean, yeah, I think they're one of, if not the oldest hockey team in Europe as well. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. I might have got that completely wrong. There's going to be like something like, oh, this third tier Belarusian league is actually the oldest one in the world. I don't know that off the top of my head. Yeah, please do check that, because otherwise I'm not going to know for sure. But I mean, wow. So it was founded in January of 1921. God, they'd only had one world war at that point, Chris.
I suppose that's one way of talking about it, yeah. Well, according to the ever-reliable source that is Wikipedia...
Of course.
One of the world's oldest ice hockey team, particularly one of them, is the Oxford University ice hockey team.
Oh yes, that's true. That's true.
1885.
Okay, fair enough. I'll give them that. Yeah. The Oxford. I believe they played the first competitive game of hockey as well. It was Oxford versus Cambridge, I think it was. Once again, don't quote me on it. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm just spitballing things here. It's stuff I may or may not have heard. But Chris, let's move on from the Swiss National League now, and let's actually, for the first time in the Europuck podcast this season, we're going to look at the DL standings. Oh, okay. Look at that. They've only played about 6 or 7 games so far this season. So
yes, it's really early. So the teams that are at the top are perhaps not what you'd expect.
Yes.
You've also got to consider that they've played, 6 games at the moment?
Yes.
They are not even a quarter of the way through the first stage of their season.
Yes.
Don't forget that this year, obviously, they're doing North versus South. And only then, when they can assess the situation in Germany, will they think about scheduling North versus South games. So they're a quarter of the way through the first stage of the season. So we're really early doors here. You've got teams up at the top that you perhaps might not expect. Teams near the bottom, Augsburger Panther, Red Bull Munich are not at the top like you'd expect them to be, but it's so early days that this would change so easily. The one thing that I've noted here is Krefeld Penguin, who have struggled early on. They're losing each game approximately 5-1. It's a little bit better than that, but I've got it written down here. So they've lost all 6 of their first games, and they've been shut out twice in the first 6 games as well. So not a good start for Krefeld Penguin. They have, they've been on the receiving end of a 2-0 shutout, a 5-0 shutout. They've also been defeated 7-2 and 6-3. Their closest game was against the Roosters, where they only lost by 3-2. They've struggled early doors, safe to say.
Yeah, not the best of starts for them. So I'll just to quickly take you through the standings here. We have Bremerhaven up in first place in the North Division. Then we have Eislow and the Eislow and Roosters in second. Eisbär, Berlin, Dusseldorf, EG taking the kind of playoff spots at the moment. But once again, with the caveat, super early days. Don't take this as the final standings in the season, because like we've seen with all the other leagues in Europe so far, the teams that start at the top usually aren't the ones that finish there. Then we have the Cologne Sharks, the Wolfsburg Grizzlies, and, like Chris mentioned, the aforementioned Krefeld Penguins, with 0 points in the season. So, yeah, not the best to start for them. And then in the South Division, we have Adler Mannheim. We have the Schweiniger Wild Wings currently sitting in second place. Paul Thompson's old team, because he's not with the team anymore, is he, as far as I'm aware? No, he was a great British coach who coached in the Elite Ice Hockey League for many years and didn't do the best of job with them, with the Schweiniger Wild Wings last year, so he's not there anymore. And it might have been the right move for them to make, judging by their place in the standings so far this season. Then you have Red Bull Munich and Ingolstadt with 12 and 10 points each. So currently, Adler Mannheim are the top team in the German DEL with 15 points. Then you've got Schweiniger in second. Then it's a battle for whoever wants the most 12 points and kind of goal difference and all of that stuff. Then you've got the Nuremberg Ice Tigers, the Augsburg Panthers, and the Straubing Tigers, 4 points each. So, like Chris said, very early days, but we said that we were going to talk about the DL once the season kicked off, and it gave us a chance with the Christmas break and the New Year break that we took, and talking about the World Championships last week, to let the DL actually play some games before we started talking about them. So,
the thing I'm noticing with the DL, and we mentioned it last year in our show, or 2 years ago, in our show on the network, when we were covering the Boston Bruins, is that how early on, there's a lot of goals until
Yes.
everything settles down. I'm just looking at, let's say, Dusseldorf, for example, but I've looked at, I picked them because they've got the highest number of goals so far, but it's true for other teams as well. We look at Dusseldorf's games. They've won 5-4, 6-5, lost 5-4, won 6-3, won 5-4. There's a lot of goals going in the DEL.
Yes, absolutely. And I think the NHL will be very similar as well, because you also got to take into account training camps haven't been as long and there's been no preseason games, and it's very much kind of rushed together in a lot of ways. And I would imagine the DL has been very similar. So in those circumstances, goalies might not be in as close to mid-season form when the season begins as they usually would be. They're kind of, have to go from very kind of their off-season training straight to training camp kind of thing. So it's going to be fun to watch the DL. I mean, that's one of the leagues that we're going to be able to keep coming back to when the playoffs is happening elsewhere, because they obviously started so late. And I believe, Chris, you said that now that the DL has started, Great Britain and the UK are the only league around Europe, or the only kind of league of this caliber around Europe, to not have a domestic league running. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. And that, I think, shows two things. One, just how bad the situation is over here in the UK.
Yes.
I think it's been... I was... one of my former colleagues at the BBC, kind of this time, just as everything was starting off, kind of March time, emigrated to Australia.
Oh.
And over there, it kind of doesn't exist, really. And I think, I think that might partly be down to the climate, partly because they just did a lot better with it. And he's covering cricket there now, and they've got full stadiums and everything. And we're here with... Today was a record number of deaths, even through the first wave and everything, and it's all looking pretty bleak here.
Yep.
And so I think it shows kind of how badly we've been able to deal with it, is the first off. And then second off, I think it just shows how, in comparison to some of these other leagues around Europe, how kind of low down in standing ice hockey is here in the UK. Football has been carrying on, rugby's been carrying on, cricket's been carrying on. They've been playing snooker, they've been playing all sorts, and no ice hockey. And we're still waiting on a decision, which I believe is going to be by the end of the month, from Sport England about whether they'll get any funding to put some form of elite league together. However, of course, we've got to bear in mind with that it's only applicable to the 5 English teams. And if that is going to be the case, and they're trying to squeeze as many games as possible into like an 8-12 week period. And I mean, as I said to you, it's not going to feel like an elite league season. It's just going to feel like teams playing a series of exhibition games, really, to me anyway.
Yeah, or like a super series, or like an exhibition series, like more of like a playoff kind of atmosphere without all of the regular season bad blood. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do. But we're not talking about the UK or the GB League today. Well, I'm sure we'll have some sort of news over the coming weeks about that, which we can sit down and kind of have a big discussion about, whether it be in the main episode or bonus clips for our YouTube channel. But let's move on to some of the more minor leagues. We've got one more kind of big league left to go, and then we'll quickly rattle off all the minor leagues. Then we've got one more thing that Chris and I want to talk about, more of a discussion. So the Czech Extraliga looks like this. So we have HC Sparta Prague in first place, 63 points in 32 games. Mlada Boleslav in a very close second, actually, 61 points in 31 games. Then you have Oceleri Trinek with 59 points in 30 games. I'm pretty sure they were at the top by a noticeable margin when we stopped for the Christmas and New Year break, and they've lost 4 straight games, so not the best run for them so far. I would imagine maybe losing some NHL caliber prospects or players might have had some kind of impact in that. Is that the sole reason? Probably not, but it doesn't help. Then you have HC Pulsen, 58 points in 31 games played. That rounds off the kind of first round bye teams that get to put their feet up for an extra couple of days. Then you've got Billy Tigri Librek and Mountfield, both on 54 points, taking up 5th and 6th place. Karlovari Vari with 48 points. So big gap between 6th and 7th. And I would imagine, based on the fact that Vari has had 5 straight losses, that might just keep growing. You have Pardabis, Kometa Brno with 47 and 44 points. Then another big drop when you get to 10th place with Litvinov, Olomouc, and Vitkovice with 35, 35, and 34 points. Then you have Zlin and Sesk Budijovic with 29 points and 24 points respectively. So the way it stands right now, you've basically got the top 4 teams. You could maybe include Liberec and Mountfield in there if you really want to, but for the sake of argument, so the top 4 teams pretty much going at it. Trinek has a couple of games in hand, so that gives them the chance to still jump up if they get off their 4-game losing streak. Then you've got basically Liberec and Mountfield kind of in that group, but also in a bit of a league of their own. Then you've got basically Karlovari down to Kometa Brno. They're in a league of their own as well, so a 3-horse race there. Then for the final playoff spots, you kind of have a 4-horse race with Zlin if you want to count them, and then Budijovic, unless they go on a real tear towards the end of the season, they might not be looking to grab a playoff spot. What are your thoughts on the Czech Extraliga, Chris?
Yes, a couple of things I want to mention here. First off, as you said, Trinek's poor on the forms. They've lost 4 in a row. They've got shut out twice and only got 3 goals in the last 4 games.
Oh, wow.
Now, it's further extended from that. And I was just looking through when you were talking there. Over the last 10 games, they're the worst team in the league.
Oh, wow. Okay.
6 points from the last 10 games. Now, to further emphasise that, yes, they were up at the top, as you said. So in the last 10 games, they haven't won in regulation. Only team in the league not to win in regulation in the last 10 games. They've got 2 overtime wins, 2 overtime losses, and 6 defeats.
Wow.
Run that back into the main standings, okay? So they've played 30 games now.
Yep.
When they had played 20 games, their record was 16 regulation wins, 1 regulation overtime win, 3 overtime losses, and no regular losses. Because we mentioned, if you remember, they were the only team in Europe not to lose in regulation.
That's true.
So they've gone from effectively 17-0 and 3 to 19-6-5.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, when you put it like that,
That's
it's like,
how bad
wow.
it is in the last 10 games. In the last 10 games, they've picked up 6 points. They haven't won in regulation. They've got 2 overtime victories and 2 overtime losses. And it just strikes me as very kind of strange, really, that that's where it's come from. But yeah, they've really struggled in the last 10 games. The last 10 games they got up, they've had 1, 2. They've been shut out 3 times in the last 10 games. As I said, worst team in the league in the form guide. The other team I want to mention is Karlovari as well. They've lost 6 in a row. That's not for a lack of scoring, though. They just can't keep it out of their net. They've been letting in 5-6 goals regularly.
Okay.
So they've been scoring, but they just can't keep it out. But yeah, Trinek's poor run of form is really quite remarkable, really. I think it's only because they were so far ahead that they're still in a respectable position. But they've got to turn that around quickly, because there are a good, 3 teams there down to Mountfield HK really snapping at their heels, and they could find themselves falling down the table rather rapidly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think how quickly they've gone from a grand rise to a terrible fall, eh? You know, the fact that they were the last undefeated team in Europe in the active leagues, and then they've gone on such a bad run. It just goes to show how quickly things can change in the sport of hockey, folks. So let's really rapidly go through the last few, because I'm aware of the time. We're already 50 minutes into the recording. So let's look at the Austrian League. We have the Austrian League standings up here.
Yep.
I'll quickly take you through them, and then Chris, if you have any things you want to mention, then you can rattle them off for us. So we have HC Bolzano and Furhava AV19 currently tied in points. At the top of the standings, 65 each. However, Bolzano 4 games in hand, so they take the first spot. Then you have the Vienna Capitals, 59 points in 32 games. Klagenfurter and Red Bull Salzburg taking up the final 2 winners stage positions, 57, 52 points respectively. Then you have Dornbirner, the Graz 99ers with only 41 points in 31 games. They've really dropped off as the season's gone along. You have Innsbruck, Bratislava, Villach, and the Black Wings Linz. Basically the Black Wings are way out of playoff contention at this point, 14 points back with 1 game more than the rest of the teams that are in the losers stage. And yeah, it's kind of, there's not really looking like there's a chance that the loser stage teams, unless one of them goes on an absolute tear, that they can manage to jump up into the winner stage, because Salzburg only played 28 games so far this season, so they've got at least 3-4 games in hand on any other team, and they're 4 points above the Dornbirner, so it's going to be a bit of a rough end of the season for half the teams in the Austrian league, don't you think, Chris?
Yeah, it's pretty much as you were saying there. So we're nearly at the end of the first stage of the season in the Austrian league. So the first stage is the 40-game season, and then obviously it splits into the winners and losers stage. So the only team guaranteed at the moment not to get into the winners stage is Black Wings Lids, but we kind of knew that from a long time ago.
Yep.
So they've got to focus on trying to bridge that gap, because they need to get, it's a 16-point gap between them and Innsbruck in the last playoff spot. So they've really got to try and focus on that. So they've got, some teams such as Ferrovar AV19 have only got 6 games to go until we split.
Oh, wow.
Most of the teams have got kind of 9 games to go, 10 games to go. Obviously, then once we split and you're playing against the winners and the losers again, that's where you might see some of the teams such as Graz 99ers, when they get rid of the big guns, pick up a few more points perhaps, and climb up to 6th and try and get themselves a favourable draw in the playoffs. I was going to say, I feel you know who the top 5 and the bottom 6 are going to be, because Salzburg's game is in hand. They could easily, pick up several points there. And then you're talking an 11-point gap between the winners stage and the losers stage. So you can kind of see where that is, where that's going to go. And then obviously once they split and they just play each other again, home and away, that's when we're really going to see the things moving about.
Absolutely. So that's a look at the Austrian League. So like Chris mentioned, once we get into the winners and losers stage, we'll be able to talk a little bit more in depth about that, because it's basically just seeing who can pick up the last few points based on how the standings are at the moment, because it's pretty much a 5-horse race. Let's take a look at probably the quickest and the easiest league we're going to be looking at in this episode, and that is the Polish League, because if you guys remember, it's pretty much all decided at this point in terms of who's going to the playoffs.
Yeah.
So you have Jastrzębie in first place and Tichy in second place, but only 1 point between them, 62 and 61 points respectively in 27 games played. You have Torun with 51 points in 26 games, so 2-horse race pretty much at the top. You have Katowice, Una Oswiecim with 49 and 45 points, MMKS Podhale with 44 points in 6th place, and Krakow with 43 points in 27 games. So very much a 2-horse race, and then pretty much 3rd to 7th, you can argue. And they're all the teams, funnily enough, that have made the playoffs. So basically, there's 3 more teams left to decide what's going on there. And that's Sanok, who are in the playoffs, and they have 17 points over Zagłębie, who have 12 points in 27 games. Then you have Gdansk with 6 points in 27 games. So after Chris has said his bit, I'm pretty sure Chris and I are going to leave the Polish League alone until the playoffs actually begins, because let's be perfectly honest, some of the teams might change around. We'll do once the regular season is over, we'll come back to them and be like, these were the final standings of the league this year. But other than that, there really isn't anything else to talk about with the Polish League. Otherwise, we're just going to keep saying, oh, the top 7 teams have shuffled around maybe slightly, but nothing really much has changed. So Chris, what do you want to say about the Polish League?
Yeah, so I was going to say it's all assured bar Sanok, and that's pretty assured as well.
Yeah.
There's 9 games to go in the Polish League regular season.
Okay.
Zagłębie need 6 more regulation wins than Sanok to bridge the gap.
Oh, wow.
So given, and that's got to be with Sanok getting regulation losses. Now, given that Sanok have won 3 out of the last 5, they'd have to go on a pretty bad run of form.
Yes.
And given that Zagłębie have only won 3 games out of 27, the chances of them winning 6 out of 9, yeah, maybe not.
Yeah.
If you want to get even a bit more ridiculous, Dansk could still technically make it as well. They've got to win 8 of the last 9 games in regulation. Bearing in mind they've won 2 games out of 27, I doubt they're going to win 8 out of 9. So, and given that if they won, the maximum number of points they can get is 33. So as long as Sanok get 4 points from their last 9 games, Dansk can't get into the playoffs. And given that Dansk have still got to play the top 3 sides, I highly doubt they're going to do that. Yeah, that's the Polish League, really.
Pretty much, yep, that's the Polish League. So in about 9-10 games time, we'll come back and see where everyone's at.
The other one thing I will say is that it's Jastrzębie against Unai Oswiecim in the final of the Polish Cup in the first week of February.
Okay.
So I'll make sure to keep an eye on that, because of course if Unai Oswiecim the 5th of February. If they manage to get the victory there, then it'll be a very good first season for one Eliza Sherbatov, who has got 21 points in 26 games. Good season for him.
Not a bad season at all. So, yeah, fair play. And we'll, like I said, in about 9-10 games, we'll come back and do basically a roundup of the Polish League season, including the Polish Cup, and see who wins that too. So let's move on to one of the final leagues, not quite penultimately yet, but we've got the Danish Metal-Ligaen up next, and this is the other league in Europe that actually has some teams that have guaranteed spots in the playoffs. So we have Rungsted with 69.5 points. Remember, this is the league that has the 0.5 points because of the whole postponing game situation. We've talked about it pretty much every single podcast we've discussed this league, so I'm not going to go into it again. So Rungsted 69.5 points, the Aalborg Pirates 68, and Esbjerg Energy 64 points. All three of them guaranteed a playoff spot in a league where 8 of the 9 teams go to the playoffs, so it's not the biggest achievement, but this early on, you can say it is. Then you have Herning Blue Fox, and you can see the difference between 3rd and 4th place. Herning Blue Fox, 55.5 points, and 64 for Esbjerg, so almost 10 points difference. Frederikshavn, even lower beneath that, with 48 points. Then you have Sondersjijk with 42 points, the recent Continental Cup champions. Then you have Herlev with 41.5 points, the Mighty Bulls with 34.5 points, and then last but certainly least, the Odense Bulldogs, 21 points on the season. So by the looks of it, it looks like the Odense Bulldogs are going to be the odd team out. Chris, take it away.
You pretty much covered it, to be honest. 48 game season, so they've still got to get there. Odense could, in theory, get another 39 points, get to 61, but that's not going to happen. They've lost 6 in a row. As you said, the top 3 have got games in hand as well, so they look like they're going to be the top 3. Herning pretty much in no man's land with games in hand. The bottom could get quite interesting.
Yes.
By which I mean it's 42, 41. It's getting in and around there, and there's games in hand, but so there's no relegation out of this league either. And I think because nobody's on a really any kind of real run of form, it might just tick along. So we've got, about 16 game, 48 game season. So anything from 17 down to 14, 13 games left to play in their regular season. So again, as we get in towards kind of the back half of January, February, and, particularly in the back half of February, some of these leagues are going to start finishing. So we're going to be looking in real detail about the run-ins of some of these teams, and then look forward to hopefully lots of very exciting playoff action.
Absolutely, and then once all the really exciting playoff action is done, we might be looking at Europeans in the NHL, or taking a break because we deserve it because we work hard.
World Championships.
Or Championship, World Championships too, that's a good point. That's a look at the Danish Metal League, and let's move on to the penultimate league that we're going to look at this episode, and that is the Norwegian Fjordkraft Ligaen. So no playoff berths decided so far in this league. Still quite a lot to play, which is pretty much why. So Storhamar in first place, 53 points in 24 games. Friskaska with 52 points in 23 games. Then you have Valerenga, 50 points in 25 games. And then the Stavanger Oilers with 48 points in 24 games. It's pretty much a 3-4 horse race at the moment for first place in the league. Then you have Lillehammer, 44 points in 24 games. Stjernen, 39 points in 24 games. Mangelrud, 22 points in 22 games. Sparta Sarpsborg, which are the team that we're sitting at the bottom of the league as far as I'm aware, with a number of games in hand compared to the rest of the league. They still have at least 1 compared to bottom place Gruna, 3 compared to Mangelrud, and even as far as 7 or 8 compared to some of the other teams in the league. So Sparta Sarpsborg, I'm expecting them to at least finish a lot closer to Stjernen than Mangelrud is potentially right now. Whether they catch them or not, I guess we'll have to wait and see, because they haven't really had the best run-in as well, to be fair. Then you've also got Narvik in the, outside of the playoffs, I should say, 11 points in 27 games. And then Gruna, 10 points in 20 games. So Gruna, they have the chance to maybe jump up and take the final playoff spot, because they've got so many games in hand, at least 2 on Mangelrud and at least 7 on 9th place Narvik. But there isn't really a huge amount to play for some of these lower teams. But it's very much, we're kind of starting to see the playoff berths decided. It just depends on who goes where. Chris, got anything to add?
There's a massive gulf between 6th and 7th already, 17-point gap. Sparta, they could be looking over their shoulders a little bit at Narvik, because it's only 8 points, but with 8 games in hand, they could easily just run away with it.
Yeah.
We know from last season that Narvik and Gruna ended up in that relegation spots last year as well, and only didn't go down because of the season being halted. Looks like they're going to do the same thing again. But again, I mean, it's very much, as I said, there's a massive gulf between 6th and 7th, and that's also shown in the previous 5 games. You look at all the green in the top 6, and then you look at all the red in the bottom 4, and it's just such a gulf in class really between them all. And again, it's another one that's just going to tick along. They're only just gone past the halfway point, so we'll keep checking in, but don't expect an awful lot to change.
Yeah, pretty much, and don't expect us to cover it in huge detail. Sorry, Norwegian fans, but that's the way your league's set up this year, so blame them, not us. And then finally, last but by no means least, if you want to consider it from us being lovely and kind hosts, but in terms of the overall European landscape, you might have a different idea. If you want, that's up to you. The French League Magnus, ladies and gentlemen, is our final league we're going to be looking at today. And we, once again, they've taken a long time to get started because of COVID. So,
yeah, basically, yeah. It's not gone well for France as well. There is an awful lot of postponements. And it's all gone completely messed up. The French League, I would not be surprised if they null and void it very soon. Because it's just proving to be, everything's being called off. They're trying to rearrange fixtures left, right and centre, and it's just not working. The teams to talk about then, you've got Rouen at the top. 9 matches played, 9 wins, 45 goals, averaging each game by 5 goals to 1.
Wow.
So they're really going out the top there. 3 shutouts in those 9 games as well, but they're out of the French Cup. But there is a massive gap between them and 3rd place already in Angers. There's a 13-point gap there, and there's a 4-point gap between them and Nice as well. When they've got 4 games in hand over Nice, they could easily run away with it at the top. In the play-out at the bottom, I mean, there's nothing really else to talk about. I only really focused on Rouen. It's so early days, but the French league is just, particularly with the COVID situation at the moment, it's just in complete disarray. They've postponed round 29, round 30, round 31.
Wow. Okay.
And I think that's just, I mean, there are other fixtures scheduled back from like round 5 and all the rest of it. So I guess they're trying to gather everybody back together to get onto an equal footing in terms of games before they start again.
Yeah.
But they're finding it really difficult.
I'm very glad, and I don't envy the people that work for the French League Magnus at the moment, because it must be an absolute logistical nightmare. And
it must be. Yeah.
I've got to be perfectly honest, this is exactly how I would imagine the Elite League season would have gone this year if they had gone ahead with it. So I think they're trying their best in the sense that I think what they're doing is they're almost doing a circuit breaker in the league and then just playing the games they need to catch everybody back up to kind of 13, 14 games to try and get to back up level with Nice, and then hopefully they're hoping they can go forward. But it's at this point of the year where they should have been playing since September, and we should be looking at kind of like 25, 30 games into the season now. The fact that they're on 9 and some teams are on 5, it's not difficult. I mean, you look at Sergi Pontois in 11th place there. And let's have a look at the results that they've had. They played a game. So they've played 5 games in the league. They played 2 in September. Well, they played 3 games. They played the 26th of September, the 29th of September, and the 2nd of October. Okay. Then they played on the 25th of October. They haven't played a league game between the 25th of October and the 8th of January. Oh, wow.
It's just...
Oh, my God.
I don't know what the French league's going to do. I would almost be tempted to either like cut the games in half and try and play like a 22 game season or something, or just kind of scrap it at this point, particularly if they've not got spectators either.
Yeah, I mean, there's kind of hemorrhaging money, and they literally for most of the year haven't been able to run the season because they're not exactly one of the bigger leagues with the bigger budgets in Europe either. So it's a real tough situation. It kind of sucks that we're leaving it on a bit of a somber note and a kind of a bit of this isn't good. But Chris did have an idea to finish off this episode. So that's all of the leagues in Europe sorted. Chris did have an idea to finish off this episode. I've gone back to the other overlays. It's more of a little discussion between myself and Chris. Do you want to talk us and talk the listeners and the viewers through what you wanted to discuss to kind of finish off this episode?
Yes, so I was try and say what one of the kind of downer moments the
Yes.
other day. And I was, we're getting record number of deaths. These vaccines are just taking forever. Like they say, every adult's going to get it by autumn, but at the current rate, we're going to end up with another 100,000 deaths by then. And
Yeah.
I kind of went in waves of it started off serious and then it kind of relaxed a bit, and now it's kind of spiked up there again. And you kind of, it's scary at times. So I thought, how am I going to kind of try and get myself out of that mindset and get into a bit of a more positive one? So I thought, right, well, let's look ahead. And, we might not be able to go to games anytime soon. I'm still down on work. But let's look at things in the ice hockey world that we're looking forward to.
Okay.
In 2021. And I think the thing that really jumped out at me for this was the news from the NHL about their outdoor games.
Yes, absolutely.
This season, and the fact that they're doing it. I can't remember the name of the
Lake
lake.
Tahoe.
Lake.
I think it's Lake Tahoe. Yeah.
Lake Tahoe will celebrate hockey's roots against majestic backdrop, and I'm really looking forward to that. Yes,
definitely. So, I kind of came up with a few things that I'm looking forward to that are definitely happening, I should say, and stuff that I'm looking forward to that hopefully will happen. I would imagine some of these are very similar to the ideas that you've got as well, Chris. So, the one thing I'm very much looking forward to, and it fits nicely with the day that we're recording this, is the start of the NHL season again. I've got to be perfectly honest. I'm very much somebody, I do YouTube as like a main gig, so I stay up quite late and I wake up quite late. I don't have set times that I need to be at work or anything.
I send you a message in the morning and I don't get a reply until 1 o'clock.
I mean, yeah, it's usually 10, 11... One, if we're really pushing it, but also with the fact that I don't have a set time, and obviously my girlfriend is in Montreal, so it's a 5-hour time difference. And if she's busy during the day, then I don't really get a chance to talk to her until midnight at the best. So it's very much a situation where with the job that I do, and I'm very much going all in with YouTube, script writing, researching, editing, recording, all of this stuff, I don't usually find the time to watch a lot of European games that I possibly could do. And I feel like I've been feeling quite guilty about this over the last couple of weeks. I'm kind of look, I'm so involved in the hockey world. Hockey is the thing that I cover. We do this podcast. I need to do a better job of watching more of those games and kind of shutting off from my work a little bit more often, because I'm kind of thinking about it all the time. But the good thing is, with the NHL on, I'm not usually working at midnight, 2:30 in the morning. So it's very nice that I can be okay, I'm laying in bed, it's late at night, I want to watch the New York Rangers play, and the fact that is coming back, and it's been such a long time since the regular season. I mean, we had the bubble and the playoffs and everything, but for a lot of fan bases, it either didn't happen for them or they were bounced really early, like the New York Rangers. But we got Lafreniere, so I don't mind. So it's very much a case of I'm really looking forward to the NHL season starting. Going to be watching, I think it's Montreal-Toronto tonight, kicking off the NHL season. I always kick it off with a Canadian game, because usually the Rangers don't play until the second day of the season. But I can't wait to see. It's either Toronto-Ottawa that usually play, or Montreal-Toronto, Montreal-Ottawa, one of those Ontario/Quebec standoffs. So I'm really looking forward to watching that, and then watching the Rangers play the next day. That's the first thing. Chris, do you have anything else that you're looking forward to?
Yeah,
I do like the outdoor game.
They're kicking it off with Flyers and Penguins, which is also a really good game to start everything off with. And then Toronto, Montreal, being a Maple Leafs fan is great for me there. So there's a couple of things that I'm looking forward to. So as I said, the outdoor games I'm particularly looking forward to, because I've got a normal 9-to-5 job. I don't get to watch as many of the NHL games as you get to. Yeah. The other thing, of course, I suppose we've got to mention is the World Championships.
Yes.
Particularly with Great Britain being in there as well. Really looking forward to that, and it's going to be much more time friendly for us, because of course over in kind of Minsk and Riga, who are a couple of hours ahead, the evening game there that starts at 8 o'clock is 6 o'clock our time. So it is fully my intention to see every single one of those games. That's going to be brilliant.
Yes.
I'm really looking forward to those World Championships, and then hopefully, I mean, even here in the UK where things are going badly, the thing at the moment is that every adult will have had a vaccination by the autumn. So hopefully come September time, we should be able to get back into an Elite League season, and everything should be back so I can get to the games again and all the rest of this stuff, because I have really missed going to the games as well. Not just working, but as a fan. back doing the Nottingham Lions and doing the commentary. Hopefully you can get up for a double header or at some point as
Please.
well and see an ice hockey game again. And then there's things, there's things like that. I think just away from ice hockey, like this year has the potential to be so good for sport because there's so much that was postponed. So we've got the Olympics, which was postponed. We've also got the what else have we got that was? There's some stuff I was meant to go to last year, but there's the Olympics. There's all the football as well. There's going to be so much on, particularly over the summer, which is when obviously the virus is at its kind of weakest in inverted commas because of the extra heat. But there should be so much on, and really looking forward to it. I think after a lull in 2020, hopefully 2021 will be really good for sport in general.
Yeah, definitely. And that was another thing that I was going to mention as the things I'm looking forward to. The chance for hockey here to be back, hopefully, whether it be in this 5-team layout that they're thinking of, whether it be the 21/22 season once that finally kicks off, and hopefully we're back to a bit more normality and I can come up and watch a Nottingham game with you because that's been a long time coming. And it's just kind of like, it's very much like the thing that I'm hoping for and want the most is the fact, is that for sports and the 21/22 season to just go back to normal. I just want sports to go back to normal. But like you mentioned, it is also a great opportunity to kick everything off with a bang once again. And that's going to be great because everybody's going to be so pumped to have sports back. Obviously, sports has been an escape. And the fact that it hasn't been running for a lot of the time, when people have needed an escape, arguably the most they've ever needed it, or that they've needed in a very long time.
Yeah, I think that's the key thing about it is that a lot of people from, sport was the way on the Saturday afternoon with the football or whatever to escape their everyday life. And even so my friend flew over to China right at the start of this to see his friend and then got stuck locked down. Obviously China took it really seriously and all the rest of it. And they were saying how it was always really at the forefront of their mind, but then they found a stream of a Premier League game, and for 2 hours they completely forgot all about it. It felt normal. It was just a group of guys in the flat watching the football, And that's the power of sport. It does, even for a few hours, it just makes you forget. Okay, if your team goes on the wrong side of an 8-2 loss, and you've walked there 50 minutes in hailstone, and then you've got to walk back in the freezing cold. Thank you very much, Panthers in Cardiff. It's not always so good, but it can just it takes you away from it. You get lost in it. You get singing. There's you're a community with all the other people, and I think to have that back is going to do a lot of people's mental health a world of good.
Absolutely. And like you mentioned, it may not have been the nicest experience, but it's the experiences that you remember the most when it's walking through the Nottingham Cardiff game and hailstones everywhere.
We're going to appreciate everything so much more off the other side of this, aren't we?
Exactly. We're going to be walking around, it's going to be pissing it down with rain, and we're going to be like, I love this. This is the best day of my life. So, yeah.
We just lost 7-0 and I don't care. I went to watch it.
Yeah, literally. It's going to be like, you know what? Screw it. We needed this. We needed this. It's kind of like, I don't think anybody's going to take sports for granted anymore. And it's
just general things for granted as well.
Yeah, or at least we hope not, because then you never know. If we start taking it for granted again, it might happen all over again. And I'm not ready for that, everyone. I'm not ready. But yeah, there's kind of, those are the things that I'm looking forward to the most, I would argue, kind of just, the NHL season coming back, that's going to be such a big help for me personally, because I haven't really watched a huge amount of hockey, sat down and watched a game from start to finish. I watched a lot of the World Junior Championships, but I've been wanting to see Alexei Lafreniere play with the Rangers. We've got lots of young up-and-coming players on the team, and I would imagine there's a lot of fans, whether it be in North America, who listen to us in North America, hi guys, how's it going? Or the European audience that we have, obviously, who we feel European audience have to stay up till 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning to catch your favourite team's hockey game. We feel that more than anything. The North Americans, they don't understand. They don't understand what it's like, and they never will, and that's fine by them. They get to go watch it live.
It's 6 of one, half dozen of the other, isn't it? Because over in North America, it's like you've got hockey, But my word, is there other stuff going on that you guys have got to deal with, whereas we haven't quite got that so much, but we haven't got the hockey either.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I'll take the hockey, but I don't want any of the other parts. But, that's stuff to talk about on a different political podcast. We're just here to talk about sports and hockey, so why not? So, Chris, you know what? I think it is time to end this week's episode of the Europuck podcast. We've been recording for over 90 minutes, well over 90 minutes. And you know what? We've given you guys plenty of stuff to think about, whether it be the scores and standings around Europe or some interesting kind of tidbits from us. Considering it's been, it's our first normal episode, if you want to call it, for the last month or so. We've got some exciting stuff coming up with the Europuck podcast as we keep heading into the year 2021. We're not going to give anything away right now because that wouldn't be very fair now, would it? But if you want to keep updated on all things Europuck podcast or send us your thoughts, opinions or questions, either from today's show or for our next show, then you can follow us on Twitter at Europuck Podcast. We seem to be getting a decent amount of followers on there, so do go and follow us. We keep you updated with some funny tweets and polls and interesting information and important stuff that you guys need to know. But if you want to, if you've enjoyed listening to either myself or Chris also, and you want to go follow us specifically on Twitter, we've got Oddman Rush YT up there, or Chris at Chris_Gadsby. But yeah, thanks again for listening, guys. It's been a long time since we've done an episode like this, and we've got some exciting things like we mentioned, and we'll see you again next time. Have a good one, folks.